Question, real estate in California. What the Seriously, can someone help? What's an escrow? What's an ARM? What is an REO? What is pre-approval? Can I get pre-approval? Why is inventory so low? Why are interest rates so high? Oh, interest rates not so high? How low is low? How not so high is right.
Before you go down the road of questions, get expert help at championsofhome.com. California Association of Realtors. Who's your realtor?
Just got a new puppy or kitten. Congrats. But also, yikes. Between crates, beds, toys, treats, and those first few vet visits, you've probably already dropped a small fortune, which is where Lemonade Pet Insurance comes in. It helps cover vet costs so you can focus on what's best for your new pet. The coverage is customizable, sign-up is quick and easy, and your claims are handled in as little as 3 seconds. Pro tip, Lemonade offers a package specifically for puppies and kittens. Get a quote at lemonade.com/pet. Your future self will thank you. Your pet won't. They don't know what insurance is.
Hello and welcome back to Portrait of an Editor. I am Francis Lombard. For this new episode of Cropped, Will Dennis and I have a fun conversation about 1972's The Getaway. Directed by Sam Peckinpah, starring Steve McQueen and Ali MacGraw, and written by Jim Thompson and Walter Hill, we discussed what comic book creators could learn from Peckinpah's work in crafting something more than just a crime genre programmer. A reminder that there's a Portrait of an Editor Patreon page where you can find older interviews, so check out all that for just $1 a month. Also, after listening to the show, please like and or comment on whatever service you're using to listen to Portrait of an Editor. It will help with promoting the show and also me deciding who to interview next. Thank you. Now here's our conversation about The Getaway. Enjoy. Hey, Will. Welcome back to Cropped. As I promised you and my listeners that this is the year that we're back. And right. I've had a year to look at things, and it's really funny and cool, actually, that when we talk about movies, not comics, more people listen.
Okay.
Oh, poor comics, this redheaded stepchild of American.
Hey, I'm redheaded. What are we talking about?
Jazz, comics, and Westerns are like uniquely American contribution to the world when it comes to pop culture. I think that's about it.
No one cares about.
Nobody cares about comics or jazz or Westerns.
It's the same 5 people that love Westerns, jazz, and comics.
I know.
I'm with you on that. For sure. It feels like it sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm one of them. Yeah, exactly.
And nobody pays attention to any of them in the numbers. But
no.
I mean, movies and comics have, other people have talked about it ad nauseum about how the connection is. And now that special effects can match what Jack Kirby can draw, here we are with the superhero genre. And now everybody hates superheroes because it ruined Hollywood, whatever, But one thing we discovered, with Miller's Crossing and Point Blank, too. Mm-hmm. And there was definitely a connection with Point Blank to comics and the work of Darwin Cook, and also the adaptations he did, of the Parker books. Mm-hmm. But now, because, I don't know, we're just nerds, we want to talk about The Getaway. Sam Peckinpah's The Getaway, which starred Steve McQueen and Ali MacGraw. Big influence, I guess, for Quentin Tarantino. I was skimming through his book, Cinema Speculative, I think that is the title. But reading that, and The Getaway, sits there. And obviously, no duh, Peckinpah was an influence on Tarantino's movie-going experience and as a director. And for me, too, getting into film, too, I have a relationship with Peckinpah's work and how I learned how to edit. When I was, in film school, I looked at his stuff a lot, really looked at it, was able to really see what he was doing when it came to action and figure out how to sort of what he was doing with editing. And I think it's David Lynch and Sam Peckinpah got me into movies and what these guys were doing and how they engaged an audience. Lynch's sound work is amazing. Peckinpah, after watching The Getaway, also has that too. I don't know, what is your relationship with Sam Peckinpah's works?
Yeah, I mean, certainly like the Wild Bunch and other stuff. I mean, yeah, I didn't even remember when we first started talking about doing this. Like McQueen is such a huge part of the Getaway. Like even in my picture of the poster and stuff, like I totally forgot that it was like a Peckinpah movie. And it turned out that it's like his most commercially successful one, too, it said, which is interesting. But I guess that's probably down to Steve McQueen and Ali MacGraw was coming off of Love Story, and other stuff, you know. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly one of those. Even in like growing up, I mean, I watched the movies. I don't know like if I got them as much as I did when I was later an adult. But I think it was more like the influence that like all the filmmakers I did like will always like reference him as like a huge influence. We should do a Lynch movie one of these times out too.
Yeah. And speaking of David Lynch has The Straight Story, which a lot of people don't know about, but it's a movie that it's Lynch. It's a very David Lynch movie, but it's not the intensity that you typically get. It's a great story. And I showed it with the screening we have, and people didn't know about it, but they were really happy to experience it and see it. It's very sweet. And I think it's Lynch doing his thing. It's a great performance by Farnsworth and stuff like that. And everybody's great in it. Of course, I had the privilege of meeting some actors who worked with David Lynch, and they said working with him was one of the best experiences they ever had. Sam Peckinpah burned through actors, but he also had a bunch of actors that kept reappearing in his movies too. Yes, the Getaway was the big commercial hit for both McQueen and Peckinpah. And it's like the last cool movie that Steve McQueen was in, the cool Steve McQueen. You have Bullet.
Yeah. But he did like Le Mans in there, which I really liked. This one. Yeah, what was he in with Faye Dunaway? I just put a Eyes of Laura Mars on my stuff list the other day, and I haven't watched that in years. Speaking of Faye Dunaway, but yeah, it was definitely because after this he does like Towering Inferno and a bunch of kind of things like that. You know, like a little bit more kind of. He's sort of on the downhill at that point.
Peckinpah had done like a year earlier, had done Straw Dogs, which was a hit, which was controversial.
I'll say, yeah.
It is an amazing movie. It's also when I've seen it as I've grown up, the themes about it and the performances in it, you move beyond the elements that the movie gets a lot of pushback on. You start seeing these characters, and you start seeing the complexity of these characters. And that is the thing about Peckinpah that even carries all the way through with The Getaway. And then he did Straw Dogs, came really back, and he did Junior Bonner with Steve McQueen, which is a rodeo movie, which once again feels very much like The Straight Story, where you have this director who is known for violence and controversy doing a small movie about a family, basically a dysfunctional family. You also have Steve McQueen coming off of the movie that we can't remember, which we will kick ourselves for. Crown Affair.
Yeah, but that's even, I think if you go back and look at the dates, like that's
earlier.
58 or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, like, so this is 72, I think is The Getaway, 72.
But he had done Le Mans, which never really took off, which now people look at differently than when it first was released. It wasn't a big hit, surprising. And then, the Bullet was, out there already. But, they're doing a small movie that just tanks. And then 6 months later, both of these guys need, they're looking at like McQueen, I think more than Peckinpah, really wanted needed a hit.
Yeah, and I saw that because that Junior Bonner had done so poorly that McQueen didn't get paid for this. He only got like back end.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but he made more money on this than he made like on almost anything else because he got like 10% of the net or something, and it netted like $37 million or something on like a $3 million budget. So he like ended up making like a ton of dough.
Yeah,
Getaway.
Yeah, he was a producer. He had started something with like Sidney Poitier and some other people. Had done a United Artists, so he was one of the producers on the movie. Right. A very United Artists kind of thing that did all right, but didn't really generate a lot of movies. Yeah. So, and it also feels, the Getaway is also even though Peckinpah, and when I was prepping for this, had a producer who was very hands off, and an producing experience and a set that wasn't anything as sort of crazy as some of the other sets that he had. The experience just moved along, but it does feel like, he held back in the violence aspect and just the blood packing and everything, but it's all there. His stuff is all there. It's so there,
Right. Yeah. And I guess Jim Thompson, who wrote the novel, and the novel is very weird. Like the novel is very far out. Like the end of the novel is like this.
It goes crazy.
Psychedelic Mexico trip city where all the criminals live or something. And it's like he, I guess, started writing the screenplay and then fell out with McQueen over it said. And then they hired Walter Hill, who, oddly enough, Walter Hill, I was looking, had wanted to be a comic book illustrator as a young person and went to art school in like Mexico or something be a comic book artist, and then ended up and then of course went on to do like Warriors and Southern Comfort and the 48 Hours and like you name
Alien,
a ton of shit, But Walter Hill quietly is like one of my, like when I look at the movies he did and like how impactful they were on like my movie development as a young person, like his name just comes up over and over and over,
So Johnny Handsome.
You've
ever seen that, or you've seen that?
Sure,
okay. We'll have to talk about that one. Or like Streets of Fire is about to blow up. I swear people are going to start, so.
I saw Streets of Fire, like maybe it was the first date I went on to in a movie, and I went to see Streets of Fire, and we were like the only people in the theater. I had my dad like drop us off and then pick us up. And it was like, it's such a weird, like Defoe walking around in those crazy overalls and stuff with that pompadour haircut and everything. That's talk about a trippy dreamscape of a movie, but so it's kind of there's a lot of these weird connections that like keep coming up over and over and over.
And so you have Sam Peckinpah, top of his game. Steve McQueen, definitely still top of his game. Ali MacGraw, coming from Love Story, and so a very recognizable name. You have Walter Hill, who pretty much gets a start with this movie. Yeah, pretty much. And then Jerry Fielding, who typically did the music for Peckinpah, ends up getting dropped because I think Steve McQueen didn't really like the soundtrack, and he bring on Quincy Jones, who does this impressionistic kind of approach to it, and it's very it's an interesting soundtrack when and it's different than other things that Peckinpah movies. It sounds different, and the sound design is a lot of the same editors on it, and let's also face it, all this cutting that Peckinpah does that's famous for, this is all done physically. There's no Avids yet.
Right.
These people are cutting physical film for the multiple cuts and, the action sequences and stuff.
Well, particularly that opening sequence, like he's doing the time in prison and it's like cutting like all in the past and the present and the workshop and all. I mean, it's like insane. Like there's some things that look like you're seeing like a couple of frames of a shot, and then it cuts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have all this talent on this movie, and let's just jump into like the opening sequence of like, how does this reflect the comics? I mean, I think we could spend the next 15 minutes just talking about the opening sequence. Sorry.
Yeah, it's incredible. The opening sequence is like, I've forgotten how insane it is,
It's not an action movie. People, okay, Steve McQueen and Sam Peckinpah are action guys. They can do action better than anybody else. That sequence is quiet.
Oh, yeah.
In so many different ways. It's quiet, the deer in the lawn, and then it just opens up and then it gets really noisy. But the reason for the noise is it the external noise or the internal noise going on in McQueen's head? And you start realizing that he's an action guy, but he's one hell of an actor too. You just that face of his, and it's just these images and sound and juxtaposition of images.
Yeah, like the overlay of sound of like the workshop, the outdoor with the deers and the whole thing is definitely interesting.
Well, as a comic book editor, as somebody who's working with that, what would you say that you could get out of that by watching it for either a writer or an artist?
I mean, I think, I was thinking about it. Like, it's probably the idea that comics, you can cover so much in terms of time displacements, right? For starters, like you can cover the entire history of the universe in like 3 panels or 6 panels or 1 page, say, so the idea that, and I think even watching that, like, I don't know that like comics probably utilize it as much as they could or should, because you don't even know in that sequence, like how much of it is like he's in the workshop, how much of it is like happening in sort of quote unquote real time, how much is like a flashback, how much is a flash forward, because you're supposed to get the sense of like a year has passed between his 2 parole board hearings, that kind of stuff. And he barely has a line up until like 10 minutes into the movie. Like, you don't even hear his voice, at all. So it's like, I think that was what I was trying to look at, was just like, one, and I don't think comics does this very well either, and it should, is like title credit sequences, like there's, when you think of film and like how many, you think of something like Psycho, where like the windshield wipers are like wiping the credits off and stuff, that it's like, there's a lot of cool stuff like that comics could probably have more of, like a more cinematic approach to putting in things like credits and stuff. But I think for me, it was definitely like the ability to shift through time so easily and so quickly that you can do in comics with, flashbacks and present day and flash forwards. I mean, you see it in Watchmen, things like that, where it's like, you're not even sure. You read some of those, like the symmetry issue with like Dr. Manhattan and stuff. And it's like, it's jumping back, it's jumping forward. It's, 5 minutes ago, I got locked into this, vault, kind of stuff. Like that sort of thing is, it's a really cool way to catch everyone up on what's happening without like taking up a ton of real estate, which definitely struck me as something that probably could be utilized even more than it is. I feel like a lot of times we just fall back onto the same things. Like when the first time I ever saw the Man on Fire, the Denzel Washington version, where they do the subtitles in that, and they're basically like on screen, and they're like getting bigger, smaller, like they blow up, they change colors, like when you're translating, when they're talking in Spanish and stuff. And it's like running across the page almost in the way that dialogue in a comic book would run across not the stage, the screen. But it's like, wow, no, I've never seen this before. And I've never really seen it since, but it's sort of even in comics, like ways that, and we do it in comics a little with modulating the size of the balloons and some of that stuff. But it was little things like that I always feel like could be better incorporated into comics. But we kind of, I don't know if it's just trying to get them out and the time that you have to do them or what, but I always think there's little tricks like that could probably be more utilized in comics.
And you never got lost in the opening sequence.
Right. Right.
Even though you're introducing definitely present, past, and probably skipping ahead too, in that you never feel lost in the storytelling. It feels, I think what the sequence does, which culminates with him breaking that model, is it tells a little story. And as I was growing up as a screenwriter, every scene needs to be a story. It needs to have a beginning, middle, and end. And I think what that sequence does is definitely there's a beginning, middle, and end. There's complications, there's frustrations, there's setbacks, there's downs and highs, and everything is in that sequence. It's a short film.
Oh yeah.
And it hits it well. And those are the building blocks for every scene, every sequence, because one of the things that Peckinpah was amazing at is, like Martin Scorsese, is doing sequences, of creating these amazing sequences within a movie, and then has a beginning, middle, and end. And then in the movie has a beginning, middle, and end. And the thing is, the ending is the shootout in the hotel, really. And it, once again, Peckinpah bookends it, bookends his movies, which he did in The Wild Bunch.
Yeah, that's the way Goodfellas is structured that way, where it feels like there's segment, and then at some point it catches up to real time with the whole day where he's going and getting caught in, and then suddenly he's arrested, and then it's like everything from there just spools out, like in sort of like a regular movie would kind of unwind itself, Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it definitely, there's a lot of weird stuff in it though, too, at the same time, like the whole weird subplot of the guy that was in on the job who's following him and
Rudy
picks up Sally Struthers and that other poor guy that's in a lot of movies. He's always like the Western hotel manager or something, the actor, I'm baffled by that whole subplot kind of,
If you want to really go at Getaway and go, well, it's a flawed movie, which, no movie's perfect, but the whole Rudy casting, and it's I forgot his name, but he's the bad guy, it's Alonzo, and the Godfather, and he's coming off of that movie.
It's like Robert, the same year.
Evans said, hey, look at this guy, because what they were doing, they were having problems getting Jack Palance.
Right.
They offered him $50,000, and Palance's ask was $100,000. And then they were trying to negotiate, and then Palance thought he was in a movie because Peckinpah managed to get, work some back end deals and everything to get it up to $100,000. But then he saw the guy, who ends up playing Rudy, and he was blown away by him. And so they just casted him for 50. I guess his quote was 50. But then Palance ends up suing the production or something. But I just imagine, I'm sitting there last night watching the end of the movie going, I wonder if Jack Palance, with Jack Palance in this, I think this movie would be just a classic, an unforgettable classic.
Right.
Just,
that guy's a little because he plays Sollozzo, right, in The Godfather, like in the same year, basically. And it's like, but in this one, with the mustache and everything, he's basically like a villain out of like a silent movie kind of,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I was laughing at myself because it's like a trivia question to be like, there's two actors in the movie that were in had big, were in Godfather and small but like pivotal roles, because the guy who plays the kid or young guy who steals the bag switch in the airport. He's the guy. He's briefly in Godfather 1. Mm-hmm. He's at the very last scene. He's the guy who like closes the door on Kay. He's like Michael's right hand man. But in Godfather 2, he's like a real agent. He's like the guy who sets up the senator with the hooker in the room where they murder her, and he does all the real dirty work in Godfather 2. It's the same actor.
Yeah, so that's why he's recognizable. Yeah. Okay.
He plays he looks kind of a baby face in this, but he's the guy who pulls like the suitcase switch at the airport or at the train station in Texas, where they're,
Yeah, and they had just come off of Godfather, and I don't even know if it had been released. And also Sally Struthers is in All in the Family, I think, is already out.
Yeah.
And I think she's just on hiatus, and she obviously shoots this movie. And
that's a wild part for her, like to be on a TV like sitcom that's a popular sitcom, That's funny. I just rewatched Clute, which would be another one we could talk about at some point. But the woman who played Edith, like the actress who played Edith Bunker, is in like one scene in that, like in a very sort of pivotal scene in Clute, like towards the end. She's wow. Yeah, but it's like she's got that crazy New York, Queens accent, and like that just screechy, like, like Archie, like you just can hear the thing. But yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, that whole storyline is very bizarre, and then it's resolved like out of nowhere. Like he punches them in the face and shoots the guy, and it's like, okay, maybe this wasn't the point.
I think another thing for like comics when you watch The Getaway is the maturity of it. It goes back to this thing that I've been talking, from the beginning about Peckinpah's the maturity. We're watching a movie that was a big summer hit. It's rated PG, but Peckinpah just can't help but really get into his characters. Mm-hmm. I think Ally McGraw, got a bum rap when the movie first came out. And she doesn't even like her performance. I was reading something a while back.
The reviews were like really scathing of her in general.
But I think she does a great job. I think she's the heart of the movie. I think she's the thing. I think people
she drives the getaway car like in all the scenes. It's incredible.
And she's involved. She knows how to fire a gun. She has no problem. She's not a shrinking violet. She's not waiting for Doc McCoy to, Steve McQueen's character to come and really save her.
No.
I mean, and she wants to, for the longest time in the movie, she wants out. Right. She's like, well, tell me, are we done here? Because I'm ready to just walk. And she's not like, I think she'd do fine. Let's split the money and go. And for the middle of the movie, there's that character aspect and complexity. And I think maybe that's what comics is. And, before we started recording, I was bemoaning the fact about when I read a Marvel comic, I'm just too old for it anymore.
Right.
There's very few mainstream comics that I enjoy that are up to the level of what I would like to see. I think you're working Vertigo and everybody else is working Vertigo, that was like the last big, like, I can read a Vertigo book and I feel like I'm not being talked down to, or that I'm just sort of rehashing an 11-year-old boy's wish fulfillment fantasies.
Right. I mean, something like this too, I think it's I like the tightness of it. It's kind of long for a movie like this. It's like 2 hours long, which is a little surprising, but it's a lot like what like Brubaker and Sean Phillips do with their stuff, where you're just getting these very tight kind of beginning, middle, and end, like you were saying, stories, and they're like these, there's a lot of complexity in the characters, but you kind of just meet them and then they go and they disappear and that sort of thing. I mean, because I do personally love those kind of movies. Like, I mean, in recent years, like Hell or High Water, I think is like one of the best movies of like the 21st century, but it's only like an hour and 35 minutes long. It's like this very tight, short thing. And you meet these characters and then they're gone sort of thing, And I think comics, definitely. I mean, it's tricky because it's, so much of the market relies on the continuity and the ongoing nature of comics. But yeah, I mean, certainly even at Vertigo, we definitely tried to carve out space for these sorts of things. I had that fairly unsuccessful line of crime books that we launched in 2010. And that was sort of the thing, like these little digests. And basically that was the way Jim Thompson was writing all of his books at the time, that he would have been writing all these novels. There were these kind of pay by the word, throwaway 155 page, weird, creepy stories, that you just would come and go with, which I, personally really am attracted to, like you said, because at least you can get in and get out. Like a lot of the mainstream comic stuff, I want to love it. I want to be reading it. I want to love X-Men or these different things. And like, there's just it's very hard to get in, like it's very hard to find like that thing to get you into it, But so I definitely gravitate more towards this sort of stuff, like complete, stories and things.
When we're talking about, the bookend of it, and we're trying to keep this to 30 minutes nowadays.
Sure.
We watch this progression of a relationship. Really, it's an action movie. You wouldn't have the action movies we have today without this movie and what these creators set up. And you wouldn't have the action you see in like comics too. There's an influence, definitely, but there's not a lot of action in a way compared to what we're used to today. The sophistication of, let's say, and this is even 95, 98, maybe, I can't remember when Heat came out, but you're not getting the sophisticated sequences you get in Heat.
Right.
The opening sequence, the bank robbery at the end, and some of the things in between, even the quiet moment during the heist, the metal heist that they do, when there's that stakeout, the LAPD staking out that place, then it's all just images and quiet. But it's the relationship, it's the development of it, it's the hints of what can be done. I think it's pushing what filmmaking technology could do, what the audience was ready for too. Because Peckinpah is coming off of The Wild Bunch and then, of course, Straw Dogs. And I don't think the audience was ready for either of those movies.
No, I don't think anybody could have been.
I don't think even today's audiences are ready for some of those, either of those movies at times. But this one is a little more subdued. But so they lean in on the characters. And does it come down to just in comics telling good, tight stories about characters and about the relationships and all the fantasy aspect, the sound and fury of action. Doesn't just carry you the way Ally McGraw and Steve McQueen sitting in a Volkswagen Bug, like hashing out, are we done with our marriage here?
Right.
Which is a great scene.
Right. That is a great scene, that whole garbage dumpster scene and stuff. But because one of the things that often happens with comic book people pitches, and particularly people who come over from Hollywood, is that they're so used to relying on like sound design and editing and acting, particularly, and like the appeal of actors and that sort of stuff, that none of that really translates to comics, right? So it's like, it's difficult you can't really rely on that. So you have to kind of go back to, some of these first principles about, visuals and that sort of stuff. But yeah, obviously like the characters, I mean, working on even a book like 100 Bullets for years, Like people would think of that as like a crime book. But if you go back and look at the individual issues, like it's crime happening within a crime filled world, but they're not, there's whole issues where nothing really happens in like a traditional action sequence standpoint, but it's just like getting to know those characters and like their interactions with each other and all their individual personalities, I think is what carried that along for like 100 issues, because otherwise it was just a briefcase of the month kind of X-Files sort of thing, or it could have easily been that, Yeah. So it's like, you really have to get these characters to a point. And I think that's the problem with like so much of the superhero stuff. I mean, it's always been the problem at DC is that the characters tend to be kind of iconic and sort of flat because there's not a lot to them. And that was always the appeal to me of Marvel stuff, was that they were more three-dimensional characters. Spidey had problems, Peter Parker had, girlfriend problems and job problems and everything else, but I feel like, over the years, like a lot of it feels very, it's kind of one note. Like I was arguing with somebody recently they were talking about Cyclops and how much they love Cyclops. And I was like, why? Like, what is there about Cyclops that, like, what's his defining trait that you love about him? Like I could tell you Spider-Man's, I could tell you Wolverine's, I could tell you even Captain America's, but it's like Cyclops to me is just like an empty vessel. I was just surprised. I was like, make it make sense to me, And I think a lot of those X characters in particular feel that way. Like they rely on the descriptions then all be about they're not about their character, they're about their powers, right? Mm-hmm. And then they start, oh, he does this, he does that. I'm like, I get it, but like, what is there about him inherently that's interesting? Like there's nothing as far as I'm concerned. Like why would Jean Grey be in love with Cyclops? He's a bore, like I don't get it, so I don't, it's interesting, like that sort of stuff.
And Cyclops has been suffering from that issue for literally decades.
Yeah.
I know they've tried to make him a character, but he's just, even when
I know. It's, so much of it still comes down to the writers and what kind of direction they're getting and how much freedom they're being given. And I mean, I think you look at this period of films and it's like, there was just so much, I felt like nobody was counting on these movies to do anything. So they must have just had all this freedom. I mean, when you think of the action in this and the movies around it, like French Connection and Bullet and 52 Pickup and all these weird little small movies that basically then define like what action was for the next, 20 years until Michael Bay showed up or something, that it's like, I always get the feeling that like nobody was paying any attention to it. Like there was somebody at the studio was just like, okay, I guess they're making another movie out in Texas. Like, I guess we'll see what we get,
Yeah. Well, let's just move to the hotel shootout, which I think John Woo was paying attention to it, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can draw all the straight lines to Woo, Tarantino, like all those later directors, like just as being young people probably watching this stuff 50 times,
Yeah. And I think the hotel shootout is a masterclass. Once again, it is a commercial movie, but it's Peckinpah just can't help but being Sam Peckinpah. And of course, you got Steve McQueen, the greatest action hero of that period.
Right.
And the guy knows how to handle a gun. Alan McGraw obviously took shooting lessons for this movie because she's in it too. I just loved it that watching this again and everybody's participating. No one's being rescued or saved. Right. Except for maybe Sally Struthers. Just shut up that line that guy sets to her. But I don't know where Rudy is. I just feel it's a master class. And I think in being able to track everybody clearly. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing, like when you mentioned Michael Bay, you can't track anything in any of his movies. John Woo, you can track his characters. I mean, and where everybody is. I just seen Hard Boiled a month ago on the big screen, and it just sit back and relax and enjoy the gun, the gun fu. You're not in reality, but it's just amazing just how you never get lost on where everybody is and what everybody is doing. And that's the same thing with the hotel shootout. I wonder what it was like sitting in a theater watching that for the first time in 1972, just going, this is like nothing else I've ever seen before. You know, if you've never seen a Peckinpah movie prior, because it is PG rated. So how many teenagers were able to go to it, you know, compared to his other stuff? I mean, people snuck into theaters all the time, but
yeah, I think Wild Bunch was rated X, wasn't it? Like when it first came out, I think.
It might have been. I'll have to look back. We'll have to talk. Yeah.
I feel like it was one of those ones, like it was like the first rated X movie or something kind of thing, you know, for like a more mainstream movie. There was something about it that was shocking. Oh, I mean, I guess maybe were they rating movies then? Not in the same way, right? I don't know.
Yeah, not in the same way, because with this, you know, would this be a PG-13 movie nowadays? I was asking myself.
Right, because what was the Temple of Doom was the first PG-13. Like they created it for that, like for Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
that
because
was like 81 or something like that, 82, something like that.
I think if you're a comic book artist or writer, just tracking a group of people in an action sequence, you can get something out of this. And being clear where everybody is and just the build that you get in this movie.
Yeah, and that's a big problem that a lot of artists have, is like the blocking of stuff, you know, like where they are in a room. You know, we used to always talk about that with Eduardo Risso, like the artist of 100 Bullets. Like when he draws you a bar, he draws you a thing, like you just have the sense, even though it's a kind of a more cartoonish style, it's not like this very precise, you know, all the lines line up on the perspective necessarily. I mean, it does, but like, you always had a sense of like a 3-dimensional space, you know, that they were all inhabited, and you kind of just knew where people were in that space, you know, as opposed to a lot of times you just look at stuff and it's very generic. It's just very flat or everything. Nothing looks lived in. Nothing really looks like the way it should look in real life, kind of thing. I'd be curious to know, like ask him. I know he's a huge Western fan, but I'd be curious to know if he's like a movie like this, like, you know, if he saw this like as a young person, you know, that sort of thing, just to see, because that last sequence is definitely would be a great way to just study like the blocking of a scene and where everyone is in relation to everyone else, with like the elevators and the stairs and the different doors opening and closing and all that kind of stuff. Just being able to track the people by making, you know, it's really funny, those guys in the car driving to the hotel, they all look the same. Yeah, right. But for some reason, you understand who's who and the numbers are, and you know, you're able to track these guys, just the unique appearance that they have. You give them an element that you're able to figure. Oh, that's this one guy's
person.
Got like a darkish red shirt. Another guy's got like a cream colored jacket. One guy's got a hat. One guy doesn't. Yeah. You can definitely keep track of the sort of desperados at the end. You know, Desperado is probably another movie that was heavily influenced by this. When you think of Rick Rodriguez, I'm sure watched all these a million times. You know, definitely. So, is there anything else that anything else regarding The Getaway? You know, as just to wrap this up. No, I mean, it's definitely one that, you know, I think if you're interested in this stuff, particularly this era of film, you know, it's definitely on the list. You know, I mean, we should do a whole 70s paranoia, like, you know, film festival, that's a whole other like limb of the family tree. But yeah, like, as I was saying, that whole era of that sort of gritty adventure action, you know, like French Connection and some of these other movies that sort of come out around the same time. Like there's a lot of, you know, interesting stuff, and I was very influential. I'd love to have the excuse to talk about Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, which I believe Jason Aaron, when I first started working with him, before we did Scalped, even, that's like his favorite movie. Like that, he just was like that. It was like, this is my favorite movie. I was like, all right, that makes total sense. You know? Well, maybe we should try to get it. We'll try to get him on and talk about exactly. It. So. Yeah, I'm sure he'd show up for that. Okay. Oh my god. But yeah, man, check it out. I mean, I watched it on Tubi, which is like my new favorite thing. I keep sending you my favorite, my stuff page or something, and it's like. I was on there the other night, and they have like all these little tags you can search on. And one of them was like cult classics. And it was ridiculous. One, how many of the movies I'd seen, I was a little embarrassed, but also how many of them I wanted to rewatch, you know, and they have so many movies on there, and all you got to sit through a couple of 30-second commercials. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, like, you know, like all this weird esoteric, all those bad exploitation horror films, like I Spit on Your Grave kind of films. Oh, so like I watched like a Maniac when I was, 14. they've got all that. It's definitely worth checking out.
And there's also Vice Squad, which is a
plug.
The Vice Squad too on Tubi. We'll have to talk about that. And the Getaway is on Tubi. Tubi's the thing.
Clue. I just rewatched Clue.
Hardcore.
Hardcore. I rewatched that recently. Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, Peter Boyle. You start to realize Peter Boyle has like a lot of very smallish parts, but very influential and cool parts in films, like through that whole era. That's my plug for. Maybe we can get Tubi to sponsor the podcast.
There we go. Hey, Will, thank you very much.
Yeah, man.
We will do this again. And we will eventually, we will talk about comics too. So
maybe we can do Billy Jack too. Throw him in
Jesus. Okay.
I love Billy Jack. I can recite whole lines from Billy Jack. It's just great.
Okay.
All right.
I think we got plenty of episodes coming up. So
thanks for having me on.
I will talk to you later.
All right, brother. See you.